Dusk was coming upon them, and the ship was underway. How that was possible, Osrith did not know, but it seemed like Phelim and Angus were angling the sail enough to fill it while at the same time unknown Norse were using oars to get them through the straits between the Wirral and the north bank of the Merse. It was ridiculous, for none of them had openly acknowledged the other, and Osrith closed her eyes for a moment, before looking at the west coast of the Wirral until it disappeared in fog and darkness. Suddenly the ship shuddered, and slowed. What was that? It felt as if someone had thrown over an anchor. Nighttime and they could not sail, so it made sense. Osrith curled up in the sheepskin and slept. It was Eswi's face Osrith saw first the next morning, one of silently strangled horror, for the second face she saw was that of a Norseman. He had a spear to Eswi's back, and it was clear that, in the dawnlight the Norseman had told Eswi to wake her. His name is Sigtryggr, Eswi told Osrith, who made to get up, but was stayed by a spear pointing at her too. Similarly, behind Eswi, Angus and Phelim were similarly threatened. "Stjora is with you?" Osrith asked, quickly, glancing around. She had seen her niece be saved from death by Berg, but had she made it to him? "How do you know about Stjora?" Sigtryggr asked, suspiciously. Behind him, a small figure stood, having ascended the steps. "Because she's my aunt," Stjora told him, handing him and the 7 other Norse bread and meat and smiling at her. After a second, she also gave some to Osrith. "You followed me, then?" "I followed you," she told Stjora. "I did not know you were on this boat, though. The fog was thick." And she then translated the Norse for Angus, Phelim and Eswi's benefit. "We must go back," Osrith told her. "I will not have your father blame me, after everything else he blames me for." "No!" Sigtryggr shouted, his long hair curtaining on both sides of his head. "Stjora is coming with me, back to Dublin. I don't care what Ragnall is going to do, I am staying there." Ragnall? Osrith thought, and remembered tell of 2 brothers, Ivarson brothers, from Dublin. So Ragnall wanted to invade Mercia, or Northumbria. Osrith would bet all the wealth she had on guessing Eoferwick. "Yes," agreed Osrith. "Go to Dublin. We wish to remove to Alba in any case. Perhaps we can work together." "You have very good Norse for a Saxon," Sigtryggr said. "I am many things, but not a Saxon," Osrith told him, and her hand felt for a jewel, Eric's jewel, which was still in her hair. "I spent several months with a Northman once, and he taught me your language." But the leader of the Norse shook his head. "We are not going to Alba," scoffed Sigtryggr. "We only have let you live so far because we did not have enough hands to manage this ship." And Osrith tested her Alba comrade's knowledge of the Northman language by getting to her feet, so Sigtryggr could see her pregnancy. "I am Krejikvind," she declared, in Norse. "I am the prisoner of these bastard Gaels and Picts, who wish to sacrifice me and my child." And Sigtryggr threw back his head and laughed, waving to his men to lower their spears. Perhaps it had been a good move not to have challenged him with the threat of involvement of the death of his grandfather, the Boneless, Osrith thought, wryly. Playing on this man's sensitive side, for he clearly had one, rather than threaten him was a good move. And Osrith saw his reply rather than heard it as the wind fell from the sails. "I know you," a voice came from beside Sigtryggr. "Han. I was there, with Canute and Ragnar, at Dunham. You are Krejikvind." Osrith looked at the man, but could not place him. It had been over a decade and there had been a lot of Norse with Ragnar at Dunham. "Then, you are welcome," Sigtryggr smiled. "If Han vouches for you, that is good enough for me, Krejikvind. Should I do away with these men now, if they are such a threat to you? Give the fish their breakfast?" It was Osrith's turn to smile. "There are few choices for a woman in my position," Osrith told him. "I know I almost had you fooled." "Perhaps," Sigtryggr replied. "But we are still going to Dublin. You may depart from there, back to Alba, if that is your desired destination." A hand on his shoulder made Sigtryggr turn around. "We are going to Dublin," Osrith told Angus. "These Norse want to go home." "Good news," Angus told her, and Eswi sat next to her. We accounted for all of your mercenmen, we told her. When Phelim spotted the ship, they were all alive. At least, that is what I saw. Good, Osrith said, refusing to let her mind wander to the next logical step. Next to her on the other side, Sciora sat, eating some bread, her eyes barely straying from the Norse leader. And is it yours? Osrith asked of Sciora, who had come to sit by her. Do you wish to go to Dublin? Yes, Sciora said, happily. My father will understand. He will come round. And Osrith got to her feet then, and approached Sigtryggr. My men will help you get back home, Osrith told him, but there are 2 conditions. The tall Norseman turned to her, and inclined his head. For a moment, Ivar the Boneless stood before her, just before Domhnall struck him down. Name them, he said. We will need a craft, a ship, a boat, to get us back to Alba, she began. And? Prompted Sigtryggr. We must make a detour, go somewhere on the way. An image of Dyfnwell appeared in Osrith's mind, and then of his son of Anarod's daughter. Owain. Where? Niceman, she told him. A child is to be taken. Willingly? To his kingdom, to restore a bloodline, Osrith told him. She stopped, for a man had appeared at Sigtrygg's shoulder. Willingly, she agreed. We are going to Dublin, Sigtryggr told a man who had come up beside him near the Orlop, after he had said a few words to their leader that Osrith couldn't catch. Sigtryggr caught Osrith's eye, his words deliberate. So you do not wish to go to Alba yet, Anlaf? I believe the king waits for you. He has a daughter he wishes me to marry, Anlaf said, non-committally. But I do not wish to marry a Scot. She is no Scot. Osrith replied, stepping between the 2 men. Anlaf stared at Osrith, taken aback at her strong words. Oh no? Anlaf asked, his tone mocking. Culturally, yes, Edra is of Alba, and half Anglish, Osrith conceded. But her mother was Thyra Ragnar's daughter, her uncle Ragnar, her grandfather Ragnar the Fearless. I am guessing you know who I mean. And why is she in Alba? It was Sigtrygg's turn to speak. Thyra died in a fire, Osrith replied, and realized that for the first time in the retelling, her heart was breaking, and her eyes were filling with tears. She turned to the sea, making the most of the ship's splashing. Set by good Christian men, no doubt. Osrith turned her head. It was Sciora who had spoken, and she was standing next to Osrith. I know this story. It is a sad story, Sigtryggr. I tried to save her mother, Osrith told them, but I could not. She was delivered of a daughter. And the child was born and had no one, so I took her somewhere I knew to be safe, and have spent my life earning her keep. Osrith looked out to sea, to the north, and continued. Edra is of Alba, Engine Corstin, she added. Constantine has raised her, and considers her his own daughter. It is no matter her heritage, Sigtryggr replied. We see how Constantine is, running a policy integration, making all countries to follow our laws. Forget our Norse ways is what he means. Osrith shifted her weight. It was true, they were better off with Dyfnwell, if they wished to preserve their heritage. But, that may be irrelevant, if she managed to get Sigtryggr to get her to go to Aberfraw, and to Anarod's palace. Do you know who gave me the name of Kriegjukvind? Osrith asked him. You all acted on it, so the name means something to you, she cautioned, then pulled a jewel from her hair, looking at its milky jewel in the morning light. Eirik Thorgilsson, said Anlaf. I was at Dunham too. And Osrith looked back to him. I had given Thyra's daughter all I can of her heritage, Osrith told them. She knows she is Danish. You cannot see her and fail to know she is of Thyra. At least meet her before you decide whether to ally with Constantine or Dyfnwell. I know the King of Alba will allow you to remain in the Western Isles no matter what the King of Strathclyde has told you. Anlaf stepped in front of Sigtryggr. He too must have been of the same stock, for he was tall and thin like Sigtryggr. He bent his long neck to Osrith. I will consider all you have said, Kriegjukvind, he told her. But not yet will we go to Alba. We sailed to Irion today. But something in his eyes told Osrith he was intrigued. Tell Constantine the First will return, in my own time. Osric smiled. Here was a handsome man, a sensible man. She could at least tell Edric she had met him. When you meet Flansinan on the battlefield, Osric said to Sigtryg as Eswi moved to one side of her, tell him I live, and remember his hospitality with great fondness. So they were to Dublin. Eswi took her shoulder, but Osric was not ready to rest yet. To Iceman first? Osric asked. Sigtryg nodded his agreement. And Phelim took the tiller and Engus the sail sheets, while the Norse rowed them out into the Irish Sea. Southwest first, then to the north. Then to Alba, Osric thought, as the November sun shone on them all. 88,888,888. On a high cliff stood the fortress of Aberfrau, capital of Gwynedd unseen, if the Welsh legends were true, where Branwen wed her Irish chieftain. They had sailed through the straits between the north coast and Mun, the same high, imposing mountains to the left of them peering over the skyline, or so it seemed to Osric, as if watching their passage. A few questions by Engus of some of the fishermen by the banks of the strait, and they learned that Aberfrau sat on the western edge of the island, looking to Arion. And Owain had been waiting for them. How long had the young man stood there, on the shore, looking to sea? How many days? And how many days would he have? They anchored offshore, and Osric had wondered how they would reach the strandline, for they had no boat. But Anarord had a boat, and it was being rowed out to them. Owain. Osric had greeted him, and the boy shined his happy face to her, the same joyous one that his father had charmed Osric with at Glashku. The boatman did not seem to want to let the boy get aboard a Norse sailing ship, but Owain said something to him, and he relented, moving aside and allowed Engus to pull him aboard. You come of your own accord? Osric asked, as the boy's feet met the deck, and translated for all concerned. Owain nodded, which needed no translation, then added, It is good to see you, Osric of the Hernoled. As he sat at the stern, looking around at the landscape, as if he had never seen the sea or the sky or a ship before and was finding them to his liking, Osric saw Anarord. He was standing on the beach as the ferryman took back the boat. Who is he? Eswi asked, looking where she was looking. The king of Gwynedd, Osric told him. I agreed to do a task for him. Him? Eswi asked, nodded to Owain. He is the task. Osric inhaled. Of course, they had not been with her, and did not know. You know how I was held captive by Diffenwell because he thinks he is the last of the line of the Hernoled? Yes, of course, Eswi said, patiently, as the wind caught the sail. It was a southerly, a good one to butt them across the Irish Sea. Well, he was wrong, Osric told him. He left a part of himself, shall we say, in Gwynedd when in exile. Eswi looked, and looked again. Owain was sitting quietly at the rear, and even the usually up Chiora was trying to talk to him. He is going to Constantine. He arranged this. Eswi said, as if all of their journey had been a puzzle, waiting to be worked out. Constantine wanted this to happen. Don't ask me how I know, but he has, and he has managed to work it all out. The bastard thinks, Osric murmured. She had heard it said about Alfred. Yet, to Osric, it applied even more so to Constantine. Hywel was going to reject his unification strategy, he knew that, somehow. And he knew he had to call his bluff to harden the allegiances already formed. He had already treated with Ethelfled, and she had told Osric about the idea of a tripartite alliance. Strathclyde had been included in that alliance, and it depended on a king of Strathclyde not so embedded to the Norse. How? Osric asked Eswi anyway, for she wanted to know his view on things, and she was unsurprised that he had an even bolder idea of Constantine's ambition. The king needs to consolidate Alba, yet the king of Strathclyde is, as ever, bent on independence. So if you raise the king, a king will have few inclinations to rebel. It made sense. They sailed unhindered across the Irish Sea, other ships running close near them as they went, but many, more than were heading west, were heading east. Osrith looked at the water, with the sun reflecting pale golden on a calm, glass-like sea. How was it that the weather had been so mild? A cold winter then, she thought, as a skein of geese embroidered their way across the grey-blue sky. A rowing boat had come to meet the ship in the estuary of the Lube River, and the Norse, all 7 of them, 8 if you count its Chiora, went to shore. "How is it we get to keep this ship?" Osrith asked her, before her niece uncharacteristically gave her a deep hug. "I have asked it of Sigtryggr as a gift to me when we wed." And Osrith watched her niece cross the water before they sailed down the coast a little, putting in off the coast at Tara, where the Slaver ship once anchored, taking Ethnange and Owain, and almost taking Eswi's brother, Finolai. It seemed like a lifetime ago, but Osrith told Eswi about it, anyway. It had been the beach she and Constantine had been together, the first time she had wanted to fuck the young prince back, rather than him take her. The first time she had known what sex could be like for a woman. The first time she had learned to grind her clit on his cock mount and have an orgasm. Osrith thought she and Constantine were going to be together for the rest of their lives, and they had been, but not as lovers. Their souls seemed never to want to untwine. Her life seemed more bound up with Constantine and Alba even now than it had ever been. Domhnall had been right, she was always making excuses for him, even when Constantine wronged her. Perhaps that was why he had never made to pursue anything with her, though Osrith had masturbated many times at the thought of Domhnall and her humping one another, riding up her clothes, imagining the pressure and the tension was him. He was not Constantine, and Domhnall knew that. Osrith knew that. Her mind looked at the coast of Domhnall Owain's land, and wondered about her life there. How close she was now to the land she had spent merely 2 years in. So many changes. Flan Sinna's son Don Shada challenged his father for the throne. Poor Gormleth was married to the big-hearted Neil Glundube who, if he did take the throne, would have to plan his Owain legacy now, for there would be no children, if Domhnall's letter was to be believed. Osrith closed her eyes to an Irish night sky, and opened them to one within 10 miles of the Isle of Monday. I am not going to Strathclyde, not any part of it," Osrith insisted to Angus, who had, by all accounts, plotted to take the ship north and into the Clyde River. "We cannot take Owain to Glashcu," she added, nodding to the boy, who was helping to reef the sail. It made sense, and they turned south, and it took them 3 weeks to round Wellies and Cornwallam and creep along the Wessex coast. Once or twice Osrith spied a fishing vessel and wondered whether it was Gert and Dulf, still trading after all these years. And winter began, snow falling onto the deck as they rounded Sent and began the journey north. "I know the waters in the east from Lundin, north," Osrith told Angus, when Phelim fell to exhaustion one morning, and Eswi was treating him below decks. "I could try with the rig sail." "No, you will not, Caeleg," Eswi told her. "You have done enough. Rest, and let us do something for once." So she sat curled up in furs and spoke to Owain, who told her about his life at Aberfrau, which sounded to Osrith like any life of a prince growing up in any fortress, and of his hopes for Strathclyde, and meeting his father, and he asked Osrith about her mother. "You will miss your grandfather," Osrith told him. "He has taught me not to miss him. He has told me that I have seen the best of Gwynedd, and it will become a part of Deheubarth, soon, under Hywel's rule." So matter of fact, Osrith thought. King Anarod had pragmatically prepared the young man so well. Were that all princes thus prepared? He would get on with Constantine. 88,888,888. A month after leaving Tara Bay, and the Norse ship sailed along the Forth, and they sailed unhindered up the river, until Culdees came into view. They disembarked, and Osrith looked upon Dunnottar, wondering at all they had done. For all of 5 minutes. As she made to follow Eswi, with Owain in tow, across the flat land before the fortress, she saw a figure herring across to them and stopped. The Mormers had gone ahead, with instructions to the guards on the river that the ship was indeed theirs and there were no Norse aboard it. As the figure approached, Osrith saw it was Saenid, and she waited for him to get to her. "You are here?" he told her, reaching for her hand, and Osrith was just about to agree when a sharp stab of pain came to her stomach, and she stepped back. Seinit caught her before she fell, and scooped her up into his arms. If Osrith had any doubt that Finan was the child's father, for the next 2 days was going to show her how much of a fighter this infant really was. 88,888,888. We had gone on to Dunnottar, leaving Osrith with Seinit, as he escorted the future king of Strathclyde to Constantine. He was just debriefing the king, when a rattle at the outer door came to Constantine's attention. Yes, he was there, Conall MacAinvith, we confirmed to the king. He was fighting for Agnall. His brother was there? Yes, we confirmed. But as the door banged again, Constantine held up a hand. Yes? He called, and a guard opened it. Ilasaid. The elderly woman of all work pushed past the guard, and nodded to Constantine. It's the Cailleach, she told him. It has begun for her. And Constantine fell to his knees and began to pray for the life of the child, for whom he had so many ambitions, and for its mother, whom he loved dearest in all the world.